Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the third and final day of Next Generation Audio Summit 2020. My name is Will Strauss. I'm one of the editors here at SVG Europe. This session is called Next Generation Audio in the European Market, the State of Play. Before we kick off, a bit of housekeeping for you. If you're going to ask any questions if you'd like to ask any questions of our panelists today, please use the Q&A tool. If you're on a PC or a Mac, you'll find that at the bottom of your screen. Before I hand over to the host, a huge thank you to Dolby for their support, their ongoing support, and particularly for this event this week, and also to Really Creative Media, who have helped us with the AV. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you very much indeed. To guide you through the session today, we are once again very lucky to have with us all the way from New England, Roger Charlesworth. He'll be your host and your guide for the next hour or so. So Roger, over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Will. And thank you, Dolby and SVG Europe, for putting this together. This has been a fascinating week of seminars and discussions. And we've had an interesting arc talking about immersive mixing on Tuesday and moving into augmented crowd sounds in immersive and the personalization implications of that. And now I think we're moving into next generation audio and implementation of next generation audio in Europe. And we're pleased to be joined by Jason Power and by Matthieu Parmentier and by Mickaël Raulet. So we have had the last couple of years sort of a lot of interest in audio. I think that UHD pictures have brought a sort of demand and interest in enhanced audio, and where Atmos in the home seemed a pretty exotic thing a few years ago, it's become commonplace, and thanks to virtualization in sound bars and headphones and all kinds of devices, we're seeing many more places where people can enjoy immersive audio. So the next sort of challenge is sort of integrating immersive audio with other next generation features for accessibility and personalization, and allowing different audiences to have different experiences. So we're really excited to kind of talk about how next generation audio is starting to be implemented in Europe and what the roadmap is ahead. So I think I'm going to turn this over to Jason. Jason is the Senior Director of Commercial Partnership and Standards at Dolby. He's been in the middle of this implementation of next generation audio, working with content production, distribution, consumer electronics, and standardization. He has a long history he was involved in implementing 5.1 surround sound, and he's very active on the standard side too, contributing to DVB, HBB TV, DTG, and he currently chairs the DVB commercial module subgroup for audio and video content. And so I think I'll turn it over to you, Jason, if you're ready. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Roger. Thank you very much. Yeah, let me pull up some slides here, and perhaps I can start setting the scene a little bit for the conversation. So I'm going to be talking about next generation audio, and perhaps it's worth just as taking a few moments just to be clear on what we think of when we say next generation audio. As I'm sure many people attending an SVG event will be aware, in the last few years we've seen substantial growth in the use of immersive audio for sports broadcasting. Being able to capture the amazing energy and drama and tension of a sports game and relay that to the home through the use of a soundtrack that enables us to restore the 3 dimensions of sound. So give the element of height, as well as wrapping you in amazing detail of sound. But what I'm going to be focusing on today is a step beyond that. So when I say next generation audio, what I'm thinking of is sound that's not just capable of delivering that immersive experience, but it's able to deliver better engagement for the viewer through being more accessible and more personalized too. So in terms of accessibility, the chance to deliver, for example, dialogue that you can always hear. Turns out that viewers have very different preferences over how loud the dialogue or the commentary is. So why not give them some ability to influence that so it suits their preferences? Or the ability to more flexibly overlay descriptive commentary so that it's easier for people perhaps with a vision impairment to be able to follow the action, and to do that in a way that doesn't compromise the rest of the experience. It still gives them the chance to enjoy the full immersive audio soundtrack. And then particularly, I think for the future, to think about how can we take the personalization even further and deliver soundtracks that are customized to really suit somebody's preferences. At the basic level, different languages, or the ability to pick a soundtrack that suits your interests. You know, if I'm a Manchester City fan watching a game, maybe I would like a different commentary from a Manchester United fan. Maybe I'd like different insights, or just a different person. So why not give the consumer the ability to choose to have the content the way that they would like to experience it, and so make sure that we're getting the maximum resonance of the content for each and every viewer. So sometimes all of this can sound, a little, a little abstract. So what I'd like to do is show a short clip that we've put together, which shows some of this experience in action and shows what a next generation audio experience can be like. So this is a clip that shows you somebody flicking through to a couple of different channels on a next generation broadcast service. And it shows you first them choosing some different preferences of how they'd like to experience the content. So with or without the dialogue boosted, different languages, different accessibility options. So with and without a descriptive soundtrack for a documentary sequence. And then you can see how with some content that we've worked with the EBU and EBU member broadcasters to create, a sequence for the European Athletics from Berlin, where you're able to choose exactly the kind of experience of being in the stadium that you'd like to have. Now you'll enjoy this clip most if you're listening on headphones. So if we could roll the clip now, please.
Holi, one of India's most celebrated events.
In a few moments' time, because there are 3 Germans all involved going for gold, silver or bronze, including the reigning champion Cindy Raulet. She came first in her semi-final. She will start in lane number 5. Pamela Dukovic is alongside her in lane number 6, and it's Ricarda Loeb, the other German, in lane number 1. Karolina Kolczek of Poland in...
Held in spring, this festival of colour signifies the end of winter.
A cascade of colourful powdered dye spills onto the ground.
And the victory of good over evil.
A man drums, the skin on his body covered thick with yellow powder.
It brings people together from all backgrounds.
Une jeune femme danse sur un tapis bleu foncé.
Une poudre colorée flotte dans l'air, car aujourd'hui est un jour heureux.
La danseuse frappe des pieds et projette une explosion de couleurs. Nous suivons un homme sur un balcon d'où il peut voir toute la fête.
C'est un jour d'amour et de fête.
Un homme est complètement enveloppé de couleurs.
Difficile pour les athlètes, surtout les passages de haies.
Olympic Stadium, and going really well is Herman of Belarus. as we see Dukovic she is the new European champion. Elvira Herman, Dukovic 12.72. She's confirmed as the silver medalist. That's brilliant for her. And Raulet, the reigning champion, is no longer the champion, but gets the bronze medal with a season best run of 12.77.
So I hope that gives you an idea of just some of the possibilities that next generation audio can provide to not just heighten the experience, but also better engage the viewer. So where are we in Europe with actual deployment of technology that can do this kind of thing? Well, the good news is that the domain specifications that we use for digital broadcasting and digital hybrid, so hybrid broadcast broadband, DVB and HBB TV, they both provide a toolbox of solutions for delivery of the next generation audio, with DVB providing 3 options for delivery of next generation audio, and the HBB TV specification providing 2. And we're now seeing a new generation of horizontal platforms that are specifying the use of those technologies. So in the Nordic specification, which covers Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and Ireland, in the Italian UHD terrestrial specification, excuse me, in the Polish specification, they all include for UHD TVs the need for one of those formats, AC4, to be included in all TVs. And there's also a draft specification that's been recommended to the regulator in France for the launch of a future DVB-T2 platform, which again includes support for next generation audio, which will drive the inclusion of this technology into the TVs that are actually shipping in Europe. And if we look at the actual numbers of what is shipping into the market, you can see that the number of TVs that are shipping with this kind of technology has increased rapidly, to the point where at the end of last year, about 4 in every 5 UHD TVs that were shipping already had next generation audio decoding inside. And all the top 5 manufacturers are including support for at least one of these next generation audio technologies. So we're starting to have the capabilities in real TVs that will start to give access to these kinds of features. Now, the exact user interfaces and the way that people want to interact with some of the more advanced features will develop over time as the industry's requirements and consumer preferences become clearer. But the important thing is there's a base of televisions that has the essential compatibility to be able to start delivering these new services. And then in terms of actually what is going on here, I mean, obviously we've all been through a difficult period with coronavirus over the last year, but I'm pleased to say that just in the last couple of months, there's been a real uptick in the level of activity in people moving towards the launch of services in Europe with next generation audio. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the announcement by RTV in Spain around their trial of actually 8K service on DVB-T2, what they believe is the world's first ever broadcast of 8K over DVB-T2. And I'm pleased to say they didn't forget about the audio in that project, and that was accompanied by AC4 immersive audio. We're also, very pleased to collaborate with a number of organizations, including France TV and ATEME, who you'll hear from in a moment, on the project for Roland Garros French Open tennis again this year. And this, I think, was important, not just because it was starting to work towards these workflows with more supporting more personalized kind of use cases, but particularly was pushing towards new open standards for the way that this content can be produced. And you know, we were pleased to see that, not just because it was a broadcaster for the next generation audio with AC4 through to the home and was something that viewers could actually enjoy, but because behind the scenes it did some really important work on pushing those open standards forwards within the industry. And I look forward to hearing what Matthieu and Mickaël have to say about that in a moment. And the third announcement that I'd highlight is the announcement by TVP, the Polish national broadcaster, again just in the last few weeks. And what they've announced is a pilot service on their trial DVB-T2 platform in Poland. And I think that's notable because actually what they've launched there is an HD service with next generation audio. And it's a service that is not doing fancy, immersive, personalized audio, but is doing stereo audio. But they've still seen benefit in using next generation audio. They're using a mode of the encoder that is able to take the legacy stereo audio, so the same stereo audio that they've always used, and is able to extract the dialogue and still provide the user with that ability to vary the dialogue level, to boost the dialogue level where they want to. So even for legacy stereo content, next generation audio is having a benefit. Now, I'm sure as TVP thinks about UHD in the future, they have all sorts of immersive and personalized use cases in mind, but it's interesting to see that the technology can be applied even in this relatively simple scenario to bring a benefit to their audiences. So if I can just kind of sum up on where at least we see that we are, we're excited to see the number of TVs that's already in the market that supports next generation audio. I believe that provides a great landscape for us to move into the deployment, the service deployment phase in Europe. I've touched briefly on the fact that the production tools and the standards to support these new personalized use cases, those standards are emerging and the tools are emerging to do that. There's more work for the industry to do, but that work is underway in the industry. And I think thirdly, that Polish example highlights to us how it's not necessary for us to have to do everything at once with next generation audio. What's important to have is flexible and powerful technology, but in terms of our services, we do have the option, if we wish, to start simple now and evolve them over time. So I hope, Roger, that's given a bit of an introduction and a bit of context of why we're excited about the progress that's being made in Europe and why we think we're at a good phase for getting started with service deployment.
It's great. It's great to see next generation audio included in all those standards, and it's interesting how much uptake there is for AC4 specifically within DVB, where you could choose a lot of different options or 3 different options. So this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but you mentioned the passive dialogue enhancement. And so that's a feature of AC4 or the AC4 encoder. Can you just talk about that just for a second?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that has been pretty clear as we've talked to broadcasters and people in the industry is there is tremendous appetite for solving the problem of dialogue intelligibility. And it's a complex problem to solve, but certainly the delivery technology can help. But as we started working with broadcasters to think about service deployment, they were clear that they needed a solution that wasn't just limited to working with new content they might produce in these new kind of more flexible production ways, but that the consumer, when they hit the dialogue enhancement button on the remote control, they need the dialogue to be enhanced. You can't explain to them, "Oh, sorry, this program wasn't made that way." Right. They need that feature to work. And so we started to think about, how we could do it. And various companies and organizations have proposed technologies that can help with this problem. But we thought it was very important to build that capability into every AC4 encoder. So the decision we took was, okay, every AC4 encoder that we build will include this capability to automatically extract the dialogue information, and so that that feature is always there for the consumer.
Well, it's a huge accessibility feature that a lot of people care about. Well, good. Well, I'm excited. We're going to be joined by Matthieu Parmentier and Mickaël Raulet. Matthieu runs the Data and Artificial Intelligence Department at France Television.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks a lot. Yes, if you give me the floor to continue this story about what just Jason talked about. At France Television, we really started our work on the next generation of TV in general 8 years ago, and as soon as we could, we added this audio dimension to really underline the next premium experience we wanted to promote to our viewers. But at the same time, there was not only this ultra high definition video story that were ongoing aside the audio. There were also this very creative aspect of our everyday life with the multiplication of screens, the fact that we are now consuming a lot of audio and video over smartphones, the VR, the car, and so on, the soundbar that also brings a real revolution into all the cables we could have in our living rooms. So yes, we needed a next generation audio systems to be able to drive the most accurate quality in all these new landscapes. So what we did 6 years ago when we started this work together with the research and development labs of Dolby, others, and also ATEME, was to work on the assessment of this new experience, to see where we had to go first, where was our first return over investments. And for sure, immersion was natural and important, but as a TV editor, the dialogue enhancement was probably the key feature we moved on that. So if now I will add to the Roland Garros experience we just did a few weeks ago, we had to deal with the immersive sound of the stadium, but due to the COVID crisis, the number of spectators was really low. So we also had to deal this year with the fake crowd that was brought by computer, by recorded sounds. And we also had to work with a reduction of the dimension of the events. At the origin, we had two commentaries that were supposed to be available for the final viewer, the standard sports commentary, and another one especially for young audiences, where we wanted to bring some YouTuber commentator that are really not standardized compared to what we are officially bringing on the premium channels usually. But that was the experiment we wanted to do this year, and unfortunately that was cancelled due to this COVID crisis. So that's why we had only one object, which was the French commentary. But if I go back to our first real trials in the real world, we were very happy for this third year in a row to offer this immersive sound on Roland Garros together with one or two commentaries. So after 2 years of intensive testing and development of MPEG-H full package, so private metadata and an MPEG-H codec, we were very, very happy this year to open the floor to the new approach we really wanted to promote, it was the use of an open metadata standard, which was defined at the EBU and then pushed to the ITU for becoming a reference document. So the serial audio definition model metadata standard was welcomed by Dolby to be able to feed the Dolby AC4 encoder for this edition. So that was a real challenge for us, the very first international occasion to test this serial ADM metadata standard. So why we did that? It's also because it comes from Europe, but we are very keen on this open metadata standard to be available into our TV workflows, because we don't know tomorrow, as a broadcaster, if we have to send this next generation audio master to an AC4 encoder for the terrestrial TV, an MP gauge for maybe a cable operator, or another DTS codec for satellite, and so on. So this really agnostic metadata format was important for us to promote. So now if I'm back to what we did a few weeks ago, so as I told you, it was very simple, just one dialogue apart from a 3D ambience composed of multi-microphone. This authoring metadata using the serialized audio definition model syntax, and all this was rendered in the OBVAN with a control room for sure to be able to simulate what the telespectator could experience. And here the experience was very simple. It was the full experience of ambience, effect, and dialogues, or a pure ambience, stadium ambience without any commentary. And then we pushed all that to the chain. And what was also the reason of the setup and the reduction of the dimension of the events due to the COVID crisis, we had to work with a specific external final control room, which was very, very low cost. And to have a low cost control room, we choose to work with the transport stream file. You can see here this streaming format embed the UHD video and the 16 PCM audio. We have the audio metadata on the 16 track, and we keep this video encoded stream and PCM uncompressed audio stream right in the final control room in order to push that to the final encoder. So this was really a second challenge before the first one, was the use of this serial ADM metadata. And to finalize my short overview on that, we had to deal with two big challenges to solve during the 2 weeks of the tournament. First, it was to be able to have a correct respect of the syntax through the whole chain in the OBVAN, and especially be aware of the robustness of the serial ADM metadata while you have to deal with sample rate converter functions into various amount of equipment. And the other challenge was about the disembanding of the SADM metadata to be available at the input of the AC4 encoder. But at the end of the day, and thanks to the efforts of ATEME and Dolby, we had the pleasure to be proud to put on air this very first combination of serial ADM and next generation audio. So let me leave the floor to Mickaël Raulet for the rest of the story. I will be available afterwards for any questions, sure.
Great.
So you are seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So I just start from the latest slide from Matthieu, just to explain that we have a similar story than Matthieu at Roland Garros. So we have started in 2012 with let's say UHD, but just raw capture, and then doing some experiments first on the video. So starting from HEVC in HD, going to HEVC in UHD, adding HDR, not HFR for this particular event, but we were part of the same event at the European Athletics, where we were able to do HFR for this one. But for Roland Garros, we were accompanying France Television in all the tests that they were doing. And we were thinking that so HDR is bringing something on top of UHD, but it's not sufficient. And we are still thinking that the end user can have an even better user experience. So the audio is bringing that on top of the HDR. So what I will explain is that yes, it was quite challenging this year. So something that you may know about is that the Obi-Wan is arriving 2 days before the event. So it's not so easy to put everything in place when we want to challenge ourselves. So that's something that we like in between France Television, ATEME, and Dolby to do the true experiments that we can do. The crisis was not also helping in setting up everything. So most of us were doing that from home this year. And in general, we are going in the Obi-Wan and setting up everything there. So the SADM, at first, we went to 2.0 at first just to do the full end-to-end ecosystem and to test on various TVs. So we saw some issues coming from the stream, so we fixed them during the first week. And then when we put the Atmos on air, so during the second week, everything was working fine on all the TVs. So it was really coming from the first experiment that we did that everything was not perfect in the signaling. But as I was saying, we just set up everything 2 days before the event, and the Obi-Wan is just arriving 2 days before the event. So it's good for something that is fully ready, but like what we were doing on our side, it was still experimental. So it's quite challenging to be there just 2 days before. But that's how it is, because they are also doing the true production at the same time. So that's also the challenging part. So if I go back to the experiment this year, so the captation was done with camera in HLG that was on the stadium, several of them belonging to France Television. So we got 3 different paths, one for FranceSat and Eutelsat. They were willing to go to SDR this year, but still using SE4 as the main delivery for the audio. There was a second audio that I didn't put here, and that was DD+ as a second elementary audio. So we did 2 experiments on the video on the Eiffel Tower, so on DVB-T2. The first one was also SDR, but in HD for the first week, and we changed to HLG for the second week, and we distribute that to various TVs with SE4 Atmos for the second week. And we were doing also some conversion internally into Titan. Titan is the product, Titan Live is the product of ATEME, that was embedding the conversion from HDR to HDR or HDR to SDR, and also embedding for the very first time an SE4 encoder inside Titan. So we were not relying on external boxes for this particular event. So as Matthieu was saying, it was quite challenging this year because we were doing everything in TS, and all the years before we were taking the signal from the Obi-Wan in SDI and converting that to HEVC and SE4 or other audio or delivery. But this time it was really a new experiment with everybody at home, so it's not so easy to handle everything from where we were. But we got it in the end, and we got the sound in the SE4 Atmos. We got also the HDR. So everything was working on various TVs. So that was the main challenge of this year. And with the SADM working in SDI and we got the feeling that we were able also to do more than that in TS world. So just to give you some feedback on so what you can get on the TV when you, so it's an LG TV here that you can get some information about which kind of signal you have, and you have the Dolby Audio and Dolby Atmos that was appearing on the TV. And here it was on the channel LT1, so you have a HDR10 that is the video signal that we are getting on this one. So that's all for me.
You can stop showing your screen.
Okay.
That's great. So the DD Plus encoder, you also had a DD Plus encoder running in those Titan.
Yes. So this experiment, it was only DD Plus, not JOC, so not Atmos. It was for backward compatibility. But finally, we put all the TVs was on AC4, so they can select AC4 at first, and then we could move to DD Plus ESC3 just to check the backward compatibility. But the mainstream was AC4 this year.
So you mentioned having some problems with the AOIP network. Was that related for carrying the serial ADM? Was that related to standards sample rate converting, or?
So the SADM cannot be touched at all. So it's purely metadata, meta information. So we saw various issues on various library that we got internally. So when we were testing through SDI, we didn't have any issue. And then we went for a first issue in some of the library that we got. And then we were able to fix them inside the Titan, but yes, that was not expected at the first time. It's just a matter of small issue that we got, but at least we were able to solve all of them in the end.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think what I'd like to do is just kind of bring Jason and Matthieu back into the sort of discussion. And talk a little bit about some of the underlying, issues, and I think we're all very excited about next generation audio, and as we kind of talked about at the beginning of this, that I think a lot of us see it as sort of the next is being right around the corner, and we've done a ton of immersive, but I wonder. Jason, from your perspective, what really drives this? Do you think that it's about personalization, or is it about accessibility, or is it about enhanced immersive? What do you think is really the driver for next generation audio?
I actually think we're seeing quite a lot of similarity globally in the responses we get when we ask broadcasters about that, and the two things that always rise up to the top of as being the two drivers are immersive audio and a dialogue enhancement, and I've seen that in consumer research work that's been done on a large scale by a station group in the US. And equally, I've just seen that here in the UK, where the DTG has just done a study asking the industry around drivers, and they too identified exact same thing. So immersive audio and dialogue enhancement. So I think those two things are important. Now, they may be important in different ways. Immersive is awesome for capturing, for example, that energy and atmosphere of a sports event. The thing for me that's exciting about dialogue enhancement and maybe some of these other accessibility and personalization features is that they can have a very broad impact. I mean, dialogue enhancement, I think you could argue, can bring a benefit to any program, whatever genre it is, news, through weather, through to drama and sport. So I think those things are going to have impacts in different ways and perhaps in different genres. But I think the But I think those two are the things that are initially going to provide the momentum.
Well, dialogue enhancement is interesting because it sort of is the continuum between personalization and accessibility, and for someone who has hearing challenges, it can be almost a pure accessibility, and there are people who hear perfectly fine who just want to hear more or less dialogue. But what about sort of the more pure accessibility issues? And Matthieu, what about, for instance, video description? And how much is that driving European broadcasters? I think we've seen some broadcasters here, obviously PBS, and really notably cable systems, Comcast, being very interested in sort of pure hardcore accessibility like video description. And how much is that driving European broadcasters, do you think?
Today, it mostly drives them because they have some mandatory rules to respect by the different authorities, but it doesn't drive the top management in terms of immediate return of investment. So I think 10 years ago, when you were asking the viewers about what was most wanted for the audio experience, it was definitely loudness regulation. So now, thanks to all the efforts all over the world, we have a solution for that. And now, maybe more than dialogue enhancement, because for sure we have a lot of people in our population that needs dialogue enhancement, but dialogue intelligibility is also important for any of us that now, when we are consuming over smartphones or soundbars, or when we try to use a wonderful, marvelous home cinema, but in a very reverberant living room, then it's just a mess, and we are not satisfied by the quality. So the challenge for the next generation audio is to have a perfect rendering. If I dream without touching any switch, that will really allocate the right mix for my own situation. So that's probably the goal that will lead us. And today, when I'm convincing a top manager to invest into next generation audio, is exactly when I can switch him or her from one listening condition to another, and show that the experience is preserved. Yeah. And I think this is the real goal. So dialogue intelligibility is the key here. We all adjust the remote sound using the dialogue perception.
Well, and that's an interesting point, is we kind of tend to think of personalization as sort of providing the same experience differently for different people, but we can be talking about the same person and talking about presentations on different devices or different environments, or the same device in different environments. And certainly we've seen interesting work from Apple and other people in terms of sensing the environment. We'll see more of that, but it is a good point that next generation audio really is an enabler of that, creating different presentations that could be, radically different. And, we talked on Tuesday about for sports, about the pub experience. I want to hear the commentator really loud, and I want to hear the field, and I've got a crowd yelling behind me. I don't need to hear more crowd. How are we on the migration into devices? And I think you guys talked a little bit about TV sets, and for next generation audio, where the penetration of TV sets, all the major manufacturers are now shipping TV sets with AC4 in it. What about other devices? What's kind of happening with that? And Jason, you're kind of in the middle of that, I guess.
Yeah. So we're seeing pretty rapid adoption also in mobile devices. Manufacturers like Samsung, for example, they ship AC4 right away across the Galaxy product range, as well as others. And I think the thing that is driving the inclusion there is the fact that actually with if you can present an immersive soundtrack to the device, then they can actually do a fantastic job then of binaurally rendering that and giving you an immersive experience over headphones. So all of those Samsung Galaxy devices, for example, include that ability to live render an incoming 514, for example, immersive soundtrack, and render that into an amazing surround sound 3-dimensional high sound experience over headphones. So I think it's mainly that binaural immersive experience that seems to be driving implementation there. And I think the other thing there, I mean, it's kind of perhaps way off our topic for today, but the other important driver there is actually immersive music. I mean, the amazing momentum there has been in recent months over immersive music, starting with first Amazon, and then people like Tidal starting to stream immersive music. And then that's really again driving the implementation of this kind of technology in those devices.
Well, we used to think of these things as different lanes too, and now they kind of all occupy arguably the same lane, where we're experiencing music and podcasts and television all on the same sort of devices, mixture of devices, I guess. What about, how about, it's always seemed like a barrier here to some of these features is the user interface. And how do you guys see the user interface for NGA features changing, or the challenges changing? I mean, we used to talk about having to put a button on things. Where do you see that evolving now? Is it less of an issue because it's all on screen, or?
Maybe I can comment and then see if the others have a comment. I mean, I think from our point of view, I mean, I think this is one of the areas where we're going to see evolution in the industry, because exactly what features broadcasters want to offer and how dynamic they want them to be, and how consumers want to interact with them is still, I think, being felt out and being explored. One clear thing that we do see is we see a lot of evidence that we don't believe that consumers generally for TV style viewing want to get in and be, they don't want to be presented with a mixing desk and have to remix everything for themselves. They want to sit back and enjoy and have content kind of wash over them and be engaged. So it's all about how do we guide people to a sensible set of selections that they'd like to make, like kind of in the video clip. Let's give them, I mean, and I think that's still an extreme example, but let's give them a few options. Let's give them the stadium versus versus on the track experience. Let's let them set their preferred language once, and then let their system automatically make the right choices for them, but give them the flexibility to choose other things if they wish to. So I think it's a lot about simplicity, defaults, small sets of options. And we are seeing TVs coming into the market in Europe this year that have the interfaces that have been specified by DVB and others to be able to start doing those kinds of features. I think the really promising area is when you start thinking about what you can do for content that's delivered over broadband, with sensors like HbbTV, and we've worked with various partners to build some prototype and proof of concept HbbTV apps, where you can have enormously rich user interfaces for selecting different things. So example, with the BBC has some concepts around having a slider to be able to adjust the level of dialogue versus background, something they call narrative importance. And you can do that kind of thing in a very nice graphical way when you can deliver over broadband, and you can provide the broadcaster with complete control over how that interface looks to the consumer. So so perhaps a little bit less flexibility on the broadcast side of things, and tremendous possibility as we move to broadband.
Yeah, that's an interesting, that's an interesting point as we kind of get to OTT streaming. We have a sort of a two-way communication, and it's inherently a screen-driven experience, I guess. What about Matthieu and Mickaël? What about the sort of standards behind like serial ADM, and how important is that, and kind of what do you see the role of serial ADM going forward?
For us as a broadcaster, that was the real question at the beginning when we started to work on the adoption of next generation audio at the distribution level. We had in front of us Dolby AC4, DTSX, and MPEG-H, and potential some other open source initiatives that are on the ground. So we don't know today what we have to deal with. We just see that 10 years ago, our landscape for distribution was very simple, and now we have to deal with 30 different paths for addressing the fragmented audience everywhere. So we want to be the most agnostic possible at the production side, and even at the distribution side, just to be able to adapt ourselves to any adoption of technology on a typical network. We don't own any network. We pay for the DTT network. I think this is the only one, and maybe one or two satellites. But for the rest, we are completely hostages of the technical choices of the distribution networks.
Right. So, and you've done testing, or you're starting testing with using serial ADM with MPEG-H or with DTS as well, then?
We designed ADM as a file format metadata standard. So that was done a few years ago, and it was mostly working with file. Serialized ADM just happened when we tried to push more about the live production and the live trial with this open syntax. And then I must admit that Dolby raised their hand first, so that's why we were really happy to work with AC4 this year, and there were a prior prototype that were running at the IBC a year ago using a serialized ADM. So for sure, as MPEG-H and DTS are aware of that. But as far as I know, they are not already ready for supporting serialized ADM. I thought that the Olympics in Tokyo were really well placed, because the NHK wanted to use ACDM also this last summer. So maybe it will be for next summer, and that will probably help us to finalize the adoption of this agnostic standard in our production facilities.
Well, to their credit, I think Dolby has put a lot of work into supporting sort of open standards in this area, and probably realized that that it's important to have open standards, and it's kind of in order to get wide adoption of these next generation features. So, I mean, they probably deserve some credit for that. A couple of questions I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of these live events, and you guys did a very basic test for the Roland Garros. How much do you think production in live production is ready for doing more sort of elaborate sort of somebody said bouquet of different personalization elements or objects? How is production going to deal with this? And do we see sort of an evolution of how production works? And when does the sort of complexity become unmanageable, or does it help us manage complexity by taking a different approach?
Michael said that a few minutes ago when he told us that the Yob event was there only 2 days before the big events such as Roland Garros, and they spend those 2 days to wire everything and place the microphone in the stadiums and so on. So they are very, very far for learning a new way to deal with objects and set up and just check every kind of rendering that the next generation audio viewer could experience. But beyond these difficulties, and that's the third year in a row we are doing that at Roland Garros, there is no matter of adoption. I think this is so simple to adopt the reflex of just setting up a next generation audio monitoring unit in the Obi-Wan compared to all the other difficulties that a sound engineer has to handle when he comes to such a production. Honestly, it's easy to understand. There is no training period or something like that. We had maybe some chance to have guys that were so open-minded, but yeah, I'm really happy that there was no constraint and no bad moods and so on. Yeah,
it's an interesting question because we get now in the truck, and it's probably worse over here, but we sort of are ending up creating all these different flattened mixes in the truck, and often there are various sort of mix minuses or nat sound without commentary and flattened stereo, and we're trying to create those in the truck. And maybe as we evolve to next generation audio, what we need to do is think more about a sort of modular approach of creating stems that then, whether they're delivered by next generation audio or not, are sort of recreated in the broadcast center.
But you're right that we have the chance for Roland Garros, for example, we have an international signal Obi-Wan for each stadium. So that means that there are one guy in charge of making an international sound. And then we have another guy in charge of making the sound for France TV. So he catch all the international ambience, and then he has just to deal with the mix minus and the speakers. But for this guy in the Obi-Wan, in charge of international signal, so he only provide a stem of 9.1 and then another of 5.1 and maybe a down mix in stereo, but he can't handle more at his level. So when we ask him to just have one commentary for the object-based audio encoding, then he only says, okay, I can put that on an input of my mixing desk. I put the expander, the compressor. I can really control the loudness of this commentary, but I will not check anymore how it's handled with the 9.1, with the 5.1, with the stereo. So that's the role of the next generation audio monitoring unit, and that's what we did during the last 3 years. This final mix for the next generation audio stream was automatically adjusted by the processor itself. So it's really a wingman for the operator.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and that can be parameterized. What, Mickaël, what is the sort of advantage of having this integrated? I mean, you guys have put a lot of work into integrating the audio encoder into your video encoder, and what are the sort of advantages of that?
The first advantage is the 4 quadrants, so we don't have to have the audio that is coming on the single quadrants on the first SDI, for instance. So that's the first, let's say, and to have also a single box. When you have some operators that are willing to deploy this, they want to have the simplest way as possible, and to have everything in a single box is the best way to proceed. And yes, as I was saying, the UHD is coming with let's say NGA, even if at the very beginning he was Jason was saying that we will have HD plus SE4 in Poland, but most of them will go to UHD plus NGA. and having that in a single box helps everything. Something that we haven't really mentioned during the experiments at Roland Garros is that we got some interstice that was in 2.0 and 5.1, and we were changing between 5.1.4 plus D to 2.0 or 5.1. So it's really changing from, let's say, add insertion to that will be in 2.0 or 5.1 to 5.1.4 plus dialogue. So that was also something that was something new during this experiment, at least.
Interesting. Interesting.
So coming back to your first comment of the previous question.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, what is the kind of the penetration? What do you kind of feel? You guys feel is the timeline for these next generation audio features, and we're starting to roll them out, and obviously we're kind of in interesting times here because of lockdowns and everything, but this feels like a lot of work over the last couple of years has gone into this, and it feels like we're kind of we're now moving pretty quickly. What do you kind of feel of the timeline of these things really being widely available?
Widely, I don't know, but for for our just national perspective, I think that the investment is not really huge, but it's sufficiently noticeable to be associated with ultra high definition. Even next generation audio is really serving any kind of video. So I would say that we can't miss that jump. As far as the UHD is going, we have as a sound people to take the same path and bring next generation audio. It's a huge occasion, and we don't have to miss that. On the other side, if we talked with Jason about the interface, the user interface, which is probably needs a lot of test and learn sequences, and potentially this would be easier if it would happen on a digital or OTT interface, because it's very easy to make it move and evaluate and so on. So maybe the complete and next generation audio features will take maybe 4 or 5 years more from now. But if we have one occasion to place it alongside UHD in the next year, thanks to the Olympics, for example, I will really do my best to not miss this jump.
Well, we're certainly seeing, as you say, in OTT where you sort of have you can control the UI and it's graphically driven. We're already, albeit implemented by Dash, but we're already seeing these features and they're commonly used. If I'm watching Netflix and I select which language I want, I think the consumer is already used to doing that. And even though that's used by just picking a different profile, it's sort of, we're starting to have a language or we're starting to have a vocabulary, for, oh, this is how I pick another language or another presentation. And, I guess one question is, will this all, a lot of work has gone into broadcasting. Broadcasting works more slowly. If we turn around a year from now, will the take up in streaming be much more significant than broadcast? So what about AC4? You guys have talked about Europe, Jason. What about AC4 elsewhere? We've had some interesting progress over here.
Yeah, so so the big thing that's going on, of course, is the start of the rollout of ATSC3 with next gen TV in the US, where AC4 is the chosen next generation audio format. So yeah, we're in the middle of supporting the first stations in going live with AC4. Again, with an initial focus very much around dialogue enhancement. That's seen as a central feature of how that new broadcast proposition is being promoted to the consumer. as a result of some of those consumer studies. But with the potential to go further. So yeah, that's happening, and as you know, an ambitious plan for the build out of stations over the coming months, and otherwise lots of activity elsewhere. AC4 just got included as an option in the Brazil specification for what they call TV 2.5. So yeah, so we're pretty busy.
Well, and yeah, ATSC3 has been a huge driver of sort of thinking through these ideas too. And Pearl Station Group, very, very big in ATSC3, have been, I guess, a driver for those features. The other big thing that's happening here, of course, is, Comcast, which is huge, cable operator, has really beaten the drum for accessibility, and it's one of their what they consider a differentiator. And I guess they have kind of committed to adding these accessibility features. And what's interesting, I guess, is if we look at the population of their cable boxes or streaming devices that they support, those already have AC4 in them. So I guess, and I think this has been publicly announced, they've been doing some tests with live content with NBC, where NBC is creating sporting events with different accessibility features, with alternate commentary, and they're testing that. But from what they've announced publicly about their plans for accessibility, their plan appears to be to switch over to AC4 for all their cable boxes, which is, fairly set-top boxes, which is, fairly significant. And it's imaginable that other, MVPDs would follow suit if they did that. But I think that the thing that Matthieu sort of underlined here is we are in this transition for UHD, and UHD has been really a huge driver. And I do think I agree that it's a sort of time where there's an opportunity. People say, okay, we're getting this amazing picture, and now we want immersive sound, and we want these next generation features. And it's interesting too that at the time when cinemas are closed all over the world and amazing TVs with Dolby Vision and 4K are available, that the premium viewing experience sort of has moved into the home too, which is a huge driver for better audio experiences, or for a premium audio experience. And we're certainly seeing a sort of differentiation of premium experiences that are streamed or available otherwise. And I think we'll see more, creative ways of getting those to the consumer. So, well, guys, this has been really exciting. Certainly have enjoyed talking to you all. I don't know, I'm trying to think whatever housekeeping we have. I just want to thank Sports Video Group Europe and Dolby for partnering on putting on this event and events like it, and thank everybody at Dolby and SVG, and particularly thank Will Strauss and Veronica Newsom for organizing this and inviting us all. And this has been a lot of fun, and I hope we'll get together again soon. And I really hope we can get together at a AES show or something, and, have a drink or something. Video conference is okay, but it's a little dry. So, all right, I think that's it for me. I think we'll wrap it up here.